Next step is to draw our lines. So let's go to the 2020 imaging icon, scroll down to chiropractic, and extended line. We're going to start by placing our first click in the left ocular orbit dot and then the right ocular orbit dot. To create the superior baseline, we want to make sure that the superior baseline we create is representative of the side and the severity of the patient's head tilt. So if we look at the image, we can see that our patient has a moderate right head tilt. So we want to make sure that the superior baseline we create is moderately lower on the right, on the side of the patient's head tilt. And so I'm going to grab this line and I'm going to scroll it down through the lower sets of points to see if it aligns with each of these anatomical sets of points. And it looks like the superior baseline that I've created aligns well through my most superior set of points and also through my most inferior set of points. So that means these two sets of points are symmetrical to each other. And we can see that the superior baseline does not go through the second or middle set of points. So that means that second set of points is asymmetrical to the rest of the skull. So I'm going to place my superior baseline through the highest set of points, which represents that visual right head tilt, moderate right head tilt for the patient. I'm going to click on a clean area of the image to set that superior baseline there, and we're going to label it with a text box, capital SBL, for superior baseline. Next, let's return to chiropractic extended line, and we're going to click directly under the superior baseline, dragging that line out and making sure it's parallel to the superior baseline all the way across. And this will be our inferior baseline. So the inferior baseline is simply a parallel roll down from the superior baseline to the top of the frame in Magnum, so it's closer to Atlas and easier to work with. So we're going to click off of that line. Remember that that inferior baseline also represents the side and the visual amount of the patient's head tilt, so it must be created parallel to your superior baseline. Let's go ahead and click a text box here and label this IBL for inferior baseline. All right, one more extended line. And we're going to create this through the Atlas points, and let's label this AL for Atlas line. So click a text box and click directly above the Atlas line. And let's label that AL for Atlas line. We also need to make sure that we mark our spots on the MIT of the condyle, both right and left side. And let's create our superior wedge line through the MIT points. And let's get a text box and label this SWL for superior wedge line. Okay, we also want to remember that the Atlas line has an AKA. It's also called inferior wedge line, or IWL. Okay. All right. The next thing we need to do is return to the 2020 icon and chiropractic dropdown, and we're going to use the horizontal orthogonal angle tool to create the median line. So I'm going to, once I have that tool activated, I'm going to click right in the center of the inferior baseline, right on it, and we'll see that tool emerge. We want to pivot it until it's completely superimposing the inferior baseline all the way across. I'm going to click to set it in place. Now I need to make sure that I bisect the distance between the MITs using what's called the center point tool. So we're going back up to the 2020 icon in chiropractic tools, and let's scroll down halfway through our options. It should say center point, Once we have that tool activated, let's click on the left MIT of the condyle and the right MIT of the condyle, and it generates an X in the exact millimeter midpoint between these two MITs. So now we can grab this median line and drag it a little bit over to the right and place it right through the center of that X, right through the center of the patient's foramen magnum. So now that we have our median line going down through C1 and C2, let's go ahead and place a text box and label this ML for median line. And that represents the center of the patient's foramen magnum. Now we're ready to measure in millimeters using the measurement tool from the left atlas dot to the median line, and also from the right atlas dot to the median line. And we can grab those measurement boxes and swing them out of the way so that we can see our atlas a little bit more clearly. So with this measurement, what we can see automatically is the side of the greater millimeter measurement is the side of atlas laterality. So 24.89 millimeters on the right, we would bump that up to a whole number of 25 millimeters versus 23.75 millimeters on the left, and we would bump that whole number up to a 24 millimeters. So 25 on the right versus 24 on the left, so we know it's going to be a right atlas laterality. We can also note that the wedge is closing between the superior wedge line and the atlas inferior wedge line. So this also tells us the side of the closing wedge indicates the side of atlas laterality. So method 1 and method 2 for determining atlas laterality are in agreement with each other, and that's always nice because it doesn't always happen.